A 15-year-old girl vanished on her way to school. No money, no phone, no trace. Her parents were left grasping at silence, while the truth hid behind a familiar face. What unfolded would expose a predator within the family, a web of lies, and a calculated obsession that ended in murder. This is the chilling story of Danielle Jones, a case that shook a nation and still echoes with one unanswered question: where is her body? Across the UK, children were anticipating the end of the school term and the beginning of the summer holidays. On one such morning, a 15-year-old girl named Danielle Jones followed her usual routine. She got dressed, ate breakfast, and said goodbye to her family before leaving for school around 7:55 a.m. Later that day, her parents received a call from the school. Danielle had not arrived. She hadn't brought her phone charger, spare clothes, or any money. It was as if she had disappeared without a trace. Danielle Sarah Jones was born on the 16th of October, 1985, to Tony and Linda Jones in Essex, England. She lived with her parents and two younger brothers. Her mother described her as a cheerful toddler, though not very confident. As she grew, Danielle remained shy but developed a strong sense of humor and maintained a close-knit circle of friends. She had a deep love for animals and was especially fond of her two pet rabbits. Among the adults in Danielle's life, one stood out: her uncle by marriage, Stuart Campbell. Married to Tony's sister, Campbell was a builder from Grays, Essex, and a father of two. During their early years, he played often with Danielle and her brothers. At first, he treated them all equally. Linda recalled that while Stuart had a charismatic side, he was also self-absorbed. Though he and Tony got along on the surface, Tony had always harbored unease about him. Over time, Campbell's presence in Danielle's life became increasingly intrusive. He began showing up frequently, sometimes 4 or 5 times a week. As Danielle reached her teenage years, he seemed to focus more intensely on her. He would wait for her near the bus stop after school, lingering by his van in plain view of others. Danielle disliked the unwanted attention and felt embarrassed. Her parents, growing more irritated with his constant visits, sensed that something about his behavior wasn't right. On one occasion, Tony remembered finding Stuart Campbell sitting on the sofa beside Danielle, repeatedly questioning her about why she looked embarrassed and why her face had turned red. When Tony stepped in and asked what was going on, Campbell quickly dismissed the moment, insisting there was no issue. Danielle had seemingly tried to distance herself from this type of interaction, but Campbell continued to press. This created a difficult dilemma for her parents. Confronting him could lead to serious family tensions, and the incident so far could be brushed off as harmless or misinterpreted. They had nothing concrete to act on. On the morning of her disappearance, Danielle's younger brother watched from the window as she left the house. Initially, she took her usual route to school, but then unexpectedly turned around and walked in the opposite direction. 2 other students saw her shortly after and assumed she might be heading to a nearby shop or catching the bus from a different stop. When the call came from school that Danielle hadn't arrived, Linda's alarm grew. Her daughter had never been one to skip class, and even in the rare event that she had, they believed she would have returned home by sunset. Danielle was afraid of the dark and rarely stayed out late. As calls and messages to her phone went unanswered, her family grew increasingly worried. This was completely out of character. Danielle was known for leaving notes for her mother even if stepping next door, and always phoned when she arrived somewhere. Friends and relatives began searching the neighborhood while Linda stayed home, leaving the door unlocked in case Danielle returned. Meanwhile, Tony went to visit his sister's house. Receiving no answer, he peered through the window and noticed something unusual. Camera equipment was set up in the living room. He found it odd, especially considering that everyone else was out searching for Danielle except Stuart Campbell. When Tony returned home, he appeared agitated and unsettled, expressing frustration that his brother-in-law wasn't involved in the search. Concern wasn't limited to her immediate family. The community also began to fear that something was terribly wrong. Detective Superintendent Peter Coltman of Essex Police shared that Danielle's school friends were extremely distressed and reached out to authorities, urging them to help in the search. Linda Jones remained awake through the night, holding on to the hope that her daughter might still walk through the front door. But as darkness settled, there was still no sign of Danielle. Police arrived with sniffer dogs and began combing the estate, confirming that Danielle had walked a short distance before retracing her steps. Linda remained in shock, refusing to let go of the belief that her daughter might still be alive. In the days that followed, officers searched the family home thoroughly, but no significant clues were uncovered. As concern deepened, the investigation expanded. Police began visiting every residence in the village of East Tilbury, speaking with locals and asking them to search any sheds, garages, or outbuildings where Danielle might have taken shelter. The public's response was overwhelming, and Linda described the support from the community as truly exceptional. 4 weeks into the investigation, organized search teams were deployed to specific locations. One team focused on a footpath running from Butts Lane to a railway bridge in Linford, while another examined a nearby lake where tire tracks and ground marks had been observed. This particular area drew special attention from investigators. Despite their continued efforts, there was still no word from Danielle. As more time passed, hope began to diminish, and police grew increasingly certain that something more sinister had occurred. At this point, the case was escalated to the major investigation team. Detective Constable Ed Mayo was appointed as the family liaison officer. His role was to support the family emotionally and keep them updated on the case. Family liaison officers serve as an essential bridge between families and investigators. For Ed, building trust with the Jones family was crucial, not only to offer support, but also to gain insight into Danielle's life and understand how the household functioned, which could provide vital context for the investigation. By the third day of Danielle's disappearance, her parents voiced their concerns to police regarding her relationship with Stuart Campbell. With mounting fear and uncertainty, they began to reflect more deeply on past interactions and questioned whether something had been overlooked. Around the same time, investigators focused their attention on a blue van. A witness had reported seeing a man speaking with a girl resembling Danielle near such a vehicle, and another sighting suggested a disagreement between a man and a teenage girl inside a blue van. Notably, Stuart Campbell owned a van matching that description. The discovery raised the possibility that Danielle had been taken against her will. To broaden the search, police organized a press conference, enlisting media support to help raise awareness. Public appeals are often vital in missing persons cases, spreading names, images, and descriptions quickly to prompt new leads. As interest in Stuart Campbell grew, officers began reviewing his background more thoroughly, and what emerged raised further concerns. It was revealed that Campbell had previously been involved in a case concerning a 14-year-old girl. He had been charged with holding the girl in his home and taking inappropriate photographs. He entered a guilty plea and, after spending time in custody, was released. At the time, Linda and Tony had been told the matter was minor and believed it had been resolved in his favor. They were unaware of the full extent of the incident. As the investigation continued, police identified a pattern in Campbell's past behavior. Over a 20-year span, they linked him to multiple reports involving young women. His approach typically involved posing as a photographer and offering glamour-style photo sessions. He would distribute business cards to promote the idea and persuade individuals to visit his home, where inappropriate photos were then taken under misleading pretenses. Following his previous arrest involving a 14-year-old girl, Stuart Campbell had managed to persuade those around him, including Danielle's family, that the situation had been a misunderstanding and that he was wrongfully accused. When Danielle disappeared, concerns about him intensified significantly. Police believed that they either had to conclusively eliminate him from the inquiry or gather sufficient evidence to formally implicate him. As a result, Campbell was placed under covert surveillance. However, what investigators observed only deepened their suspicions. Campbell didn't behave like a distressed uncle whose niece had gone missing. Instead, he spent time driving between car parks, taking photographs of silver vehicles that matched the make and color of his own Nissan Primera. Detectives suspected he was fabricating an alibi documenting the presence of similar cars in various locations to suggest that other vehicles like his were commonly seen in the area. This behavior stood in stark contrast to what might be expected from a concerned family member. After hours of watching his movements, authorities knew they had to act. Every decision carried weight. If Danielle was still alive and being held, they risked her safety by moving in too early. Yet if they waited too long, they could lose the chance to find her. On the 5th day since Danielle vanished, at around midnight, police moved forward and arrested Stuart Campbell. During the arrest and subsequent interviews, detectives pressed him for answers, particularly about his relationship with Danielle and his activities around the time she disappeared. At the same time, police were informed that Danielle, like many teenagers, occasionally had a strained relationship with her father. According to her mother, these tensions were typical and nothing out of the ordinary. During questioning, Campbell referenced this, portraying himself as a mediator within the family who tried to ease tensions between Danielle and her parents. He painted a picture of a household on edge, claiming that he had often stepped in to help maintain peace for the sake of everyone, including Danielle's younger brothers. To account for his whereabouts on the day Danielle disappeared, Campbell told police he had gone to a DIY store in Raleigh. However, investigators found it odd that he made no purchases. He explained that he was delayed returning home and had contacted his wife to let her know. He also said that after arriving home, he went to a neighbor's house to help with outdoor construction work. Despite repeated questioning, Campbell remained uncooperative. In the absence of clear physical evidence, the police had no legal grounds to continue holding him, and he was released on bail while further investigations were carried out. Detective Superintendent Peter Coltman later admitted that releasing Stuart Campbell from custody deeply concerned him, as he considered Campbell to be a dangerous individual. But without clear evidence, police were limited in their ability to act. Every aspect of the investigation was meticulously reviewed. During a search of Danielle's bedroom, investigators discovered a pencil case containing 2 handwritten notes. One wished her a nice holiday and signed off affectionately. The second repeated similar sentiments, expressing that her smile was missed. Both were signed by Stuart Campbell. In the weeks leading up to her disappearance, Danielle had gone on a family holiday. While she was away, Campbell had reportedly entered her bedroom and left the notes behind. Danielle never mentioned this to her mother, but did share it with a friend, who was alarmed not only by the tone of the messages but by the fact that Campbell had accessed her private space. Since he had previously installed the new back door, police suspected he still had a copy of the key, although they never recovered one. Simultaneously, police conducted a full search of Campbell's semi-detached home on Meadow Road. Inside, they found extensive photography equipment and a large quantity of indecent images, including photographs taken of young girls. Some of the material had also been downloaded from the internet. In the attic, investigators discovered a concealed bag filled with troubling contents, lingerie, handcuffs, and other items that suggested a disturbing pattern of behavior. Among these was a pair of white stockings, which initially seemed unremarkable, but when viewed alongside the other evidence, took on greater significance. The stockings were sent for forensic analysis. The results revealed the presence of blood, and DNA testing confirmed a mixture of genetic material belonging to both Stuart Campbell and Danielle Jones. This became one of the most critical pieces of evidence in the case. In addition to the items found in his home, police also seized Campbell's blue van as part of the investigation. Though they were unable to publicly name him as a murder suspect without formal charges, senior officers, including Detective Chief Superintendent Steve Reynolds, acknowledged that Campbell had developed a relationship with Danielle that was highly inappropriate and likely criminal. Public support for the search was overwhelming. Large groups of volunteers gathered to help search areas around the Thames near Danielle's home. The atmosphere was described as solemn and determined, with many people committed to continuing the search for as long as necessary. Her family clung to the hope that she might still be alive, but as police began exploring deep water, derelict buildings, and more remote locations, that hope gradually diminished. In the midst of the investigation, Stuart Campbell presented police with a text message he claimed to have received from Danielle's phone. The message, written in a casual tone, suggested she was in trouble. Another message, allegedly sent from her phone on the day she vanished, thanked him for being kind and called him the best uncle ever, ending with an apology to her mother and affectionate sign-off. At first glance, this suggested Danielle might still be alive, briefly reigniting her family's hope. However, their optimism was tempered by the fact that she still hadn't contacted them directly or returned home. This apparent breakthrough soon took a darker turn. When investigators considered the wider context, Campbell's prior behavior, the evidence recovered from his home, and his known interest in young girls, the messages seemed suspicious. A team of specialists was brought in, including a telecommunications expert. Analysis confirmed that Campbell's claim of being at a DIY store in Raleigh was false. Phone data showed he had made the relevant call not in Raleigh, but near the East Tilbury and Corringham area, closer to his home. A forensic linguist was also asked to examine the text messages. Comparing them to Danielle's past messages, the expert identified clear differences in spelling and phrasing. One red flag was the word "what," spelled as "what" in the message to Campbell, something Danielle had never done in her known texts. Cell site analysis confirmed that both phones had connected to the same mast when the message was sent. Further data revealed that Campbell's phone and Danielle's phone had remained near his home for approximately 30 hours after her disappearance. These findings led police to believe the messages were fabricated by Campbell in an attempt to mislead the investigation. In the face of growing despair, Danielle's family made a public appeal, pleading for her safe return and urging anyone with information to come forward. 4 weeks after Danielle's disappearance, her case was featured on a televised crime program, drawing national attention. While the search had already received significant media coverage, police hoped the broadcast might still uncover new leads or prompt previously silent witnesses to come forward. Detectives were convinced that Danielle had been abducted. She had last been seen walking toward Coronation Avenue, but beyond that, her movements remained unknown. Authorities urged anyone who might have seen her after she left the road near her home to contact them immediately. Investigators emphasized that even small details, something a witness might consider irrelevant, could prove vital. Particular attention was given to a reported sighting of a teenage girl arguing with a man near a blue van. Detectives acknowledged that it might have been Danielle or another person entirely, but insisted that it was crucial to identify those involved to either include or eliminate them from the inquiry. They appealed for anyone who had witnessed a conversation or confrontation involving Danielle to speak up, regardless of how minor their observations seemed. Police also speculated that someone close to Danielle, perhaps a classmate or a friend, might be holding back important information. They believed there could be individuals who knew something she had shared before going missing, whether at school or within the community. Officers stressed that even if fear or uncertainty had prevented people from speaking earlier, now was the time to act. They reassured potential witnesses that they would not be judged for delays in coming forward. Danielle's parents participated in the episode as well. Her father stated firmly that he did not believe she had run away. Her mother, Linda, made an emotional appeal, asking anyone with knowledge to contact the police. She acknowledged that speaking out could be frightening, but insisted it was necessary to uncover what had happened to their daughter. Their message was clear. No detail was too small if it could help bring Danielle home. When Stuart Campbell returned to answer his bail conditions, he was arrested, again this time for the possession of indecent images of young girls found during the search of his home. Detective Chief Superintendent Steve Reynolds of the Major Investigation Team confirmed that Campbell was charged with these offenses and taken to Harlow Police Station for further questioning. While this case progressed, investigators quietly continued building the case against him for the suspected murder of Danielle Jones. Shortly after this second arrest, Campbell's brother Alex paid him a visit at the request of the police. They asked Alex to speak with him and later share his impression. Within minutes, Alex said he was convinced his brother was lying. From that point onward, he claimed there had never been a doubt in his mind about Campbell's guilt. For Danielle's family, the revelation was devastating. The man they once welcomed into their lives had manipulated them all along. Linda later shared that Campbell had a calculated way of driving emotional distance between fathers and daughters. He often insinuated that Danielle's home life was troubled, casting himself as someone who understood her better than her own parents. He would then approach Tony and Linda, pretending to be a mediator who had spoken to Danielle and could help resolve tension in the household. In truth, he was deliberately playing both sides, fueling division while maintaining a helpful facade. The extent of Campbell's fixation became more evident when police discovered a personal diary, later referred to as the Danielle diary, in which he recorded every phone call, text message, or interaction with her. His interest had evolved into a dangerous obsession. In one instance, he took Danielle shopping, and then to the cinema. Danielle later told a friend that Campbell had held her hand during the outing. The friend's father recalled feeling uneasy but chose not to confront the situation. He feared that speaking up might damage the relationship between the families and believed it wasn't his place to interfere. Campbell exploited Danielle's adolescence, using flattery and attention to lure her further into his manipulations. Despite the absence of a body, the Crown Prosecution Service determined that there was enough evidence to formally charge Stuart Campbell with the kidnap and murder of Danielle Jones. Following this decision, Campbell was held on remand for the next 11 months. During this period, Essex police faced a significant logistical challenge. Over 800 reported sightings of Danielle had surfaced across the UK and Europe. Every one of these had to be thoroughly investigated and ruled out. If any report was left unexamined, it could be used by the defense to suggest she might still be alive, potentially undermining the murder charge. In preparation for the trial, which would involve one of their sons testifying, Linda and Tony brought both boys to the courthouse to help them become familiar with the environment. Linda described the emotional toll on the family, explaining that both sons had been deeply impacted by Danielle's disappearance. One responded with quiet detachment, while the other displayed intense anger. Beyond the trial itself, the family was under immense strain. Tony, who was self-employed, had returned to work at his dry cleaning business, while Linda had given up her part-time cleaning job. In a documentary filmed in the year following Danielle's disappearance, Linda shared that the situation had created tensions between her and Tony due to Stuart Campbell's connection to Tony's side of the family. She admitted to feelings of resentment, though she knew Tony was not to blame. Even simple daily tasks, like laundry, had become painful reminders there were no clothes of Danielle's left to wash. Meanwhile, Tony revealed that the case had caused a rift with his parents and sister, a divide that he felt was now beyond repair. In the final months before the trial, efforts to locate Danielle's body intensified. It was not only about strengthening the prosecution's case, but also about providing closure for her family. They needed answers, and they needed a place to grieve. 12 days before the trial was due to begin, a body was discovered in Hampshire. Police immediately secured the area and began investigations to determine the identity. As her family, the media, and the public waited anxiously, the forensic results were soon to be released. Despite the overwhelming pain and anger they carried, Linda and Tony Jones sat through the trial, facing the man accused of destroying their family. The prosecution's case rested on a number of key pieces of evidence. On the morning Danielle disappeared, she had been seen speaking to a man near a blue van, resembling the one owned by Stuart Campbell. She vanished without contacting her parents, something entirely out of character. Investigators also presented the blood-stained white stockings found in Campbell's home items that carried DNA from both Danielle and Campbell. Further evidence included Campbell's personal diary, which revealed not only his growing fixation on teenage girls, but also references to coercing some into posing for topless photographs. A critical part of the case revolved around text messages Campbell claimed Danielle had sent him. These messages did not follow her typical writing style. Unlike her usual lowercase texts, these were written in all capital letters. Forensic authorship experts concluded that the messages had likely been composed by Campbell himself, intended to create the false impression that Danielle was still alive. Mobile phone data provided additional damaging information. Records from the mobile switching center contradicted Campbell's claim that he was at a DIY store in Raleigh at the time of Danielle's disappearance. Analysis showed that both his phone and Danielle's had connected to the same cell tower when the messages were sent. Even more troubling, the phones remained near his home for approximately 30 hours after she went missing. Throughout the trial, Campbell remained mostly silent but was observed frequently passing notes to his legal team, attempting to control how witnesses were questioned. After 11 weeks, the jury reached a verdict. Stuart Campbell was found guilty by majority of both the abduction and murder of Danielle Jones. He received a life sentence for the murder, to run concurrently with a 10-year sentence for the abduction charge. Later, the High Court ruled that he would have to serve at least 20 years before being eligible for parole. On Christmas Eve, police made arrangements to speak with Campbell once more, but he refused to cooperate. Despite their anguish, Linda and Tony Jones sat through the trial, confronting the man accused of destroying their family. The prosecution's case relied on multiple pieces of evidence. Danielle had last been seen speaking to a man near a blue van resembling Campbell's. After that, she disappeared without contacting her parents, something completely out of character. Key evidence included the blood-stained stockings containing both Danielle's and Campbell's DNA, and a diary detailing his fixation on teenage girls, including attempts to manipulate them into posing for indecent photos. The text messages Campbell claimed Danielle had sent him also raised suspicion. They differed in tone and format from her usual messages, using capital letters instead of lowercase. Forensic experts concluded the messages were fabricated, likely by Campbell, to suggest Danielle was still alive. Phone records undermined Campbell's alibi. He said he was at a DIY store in Raleigh, but mobile data placed both his phone and Danielle's near his home, connected to the same mast at the time the messages were sent. The phones remained close together for about 30 hours after her disappearance. Although mostly silent during the proceedings, Campbell frequently passed notes to his legal team, appearing to control how witnesses were handled. After an 11-week trial, the jury found him guilty by majority of both abduction and murder. He received a life sentence for murder, alongside a 10-year sentence for abduction. Later, the High Court ruled he must serve at least 20 years before parole eligibility. On Christmas Eve, when police requested a follow-up interview, Campbell refused to cooperate. After his conviction in 2004, Stuart Campbell was granted permission to appeal. His legal team argued that the trial judge should have excluded evidence suggesting he had an obsession with photographing young girls and had accessed inappropriate material online. They also questioned the impartiality of the jury, noting that one juror lived close to an officer involved in the case and another lived in the same village as the lead investigator. In 2005, the Court of Appeal dismissed the challenge, upholding the conviction. That same year, the inquest into Danielle's death ruled it an unlawful killing. Despite repeated interviews, Campbell refused to cooperate with police or reveal where Danielle's remains were. Danielle's case also had a broader impact. The use of text messages as forensic evidence inspired further academic interest. A research team at the University of Leicester began studying text message styles to explore how authorship analysis could support future investigations. Years later, Essex and Kent police began searching a garage block in Thurrock after receiving new intelligence. The garages, located roughly 6 miles from where Danielle was last seen, had not been searched during the original investigation, despite information pointing to the site. Danielle's parents visited the location, spending time with officers, a sign of the seriousness of this renewed inquiry. Police received information about suspicious activity in a garage block shortly after Danielle's disappearance. A man had reportedly been seen at the site, located just half a mile from Campbell's home. Believing this to be a credible lead, officers erected fences and began a week-long search, hoping it might finally reveal what had happened to Danielle 16 years earlier. Her parents expressed cautious hope that the search might offer long-awaited answers. Sadly, no evidence was found during the excavation. In 2019, Linda Jones publicly supported Helen's Law, a proposed legal reform named after murder victim Helen McCourt. The law sought to deny parole to convicted killers who refused to reveal the location of their victims' remains. Helen's murderer, Ian Sims, had never disclosed where her body was hidden, prompting a campaign led by Helen's mother, Marie McCourt. With over 600,000 petition signatures and strong government backing, Helen's law received royal assent in November 2020. While it does not automatically block parole, it requires the parole board to consider whether the offender has cooperated with authorities as part of its decision-making process. In 2021, Campbell's brother, Alex Sharkey, published a book titled My Brother the Killer, reflecting on his life alongside Stewart and the aftermath of Danielle's disappearance. On the 20th anniversary of the case, Essex Police held a remembrance event in honor of Danielle Jones. Officers recalled how the investigation had affected hundreds within the force, from her disappearance and the murder conviction to the enduring grief of her family. Danielle's parents, who have never had the chance to bury their daughter, continue to hope they will one day be able to lay her to rest. The pain of not having that closure remains, but so does their determination to find her. The case of Danielle Jones is a haunting reminder that the greatest betrayals often come from those closest to us. A trusted family member, once seen as a protective figure, turned out to be the person responsible for unthinkable harm. Though justice was served in court, the absence of Danielle's body continues to leave a deep wound that time cannot heal. Her story has shaped how investigators approach digital evidence and how society confronts offenders who refuse to reveal the truth. But for her family, justice will never feel complete without the chance to say a final goodbye. If this story moved you, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and explore more true crime cases we've covered. Each case sheds light on the darkest corners of human behavior and the strength of those left behind. Thank you for watching.